It's an historic day for us. We're launching a brand new feature on 5FM. It's going to happen once a month on the third Friday in the afternoon between 3 and 4 right here on our show. Nick Hammond is hosting it. It is called 5Talks. It's live from the SABC in Auckland Park. Today, 5FM and Youngblood 5 presenting. Remember, you can stream the whole thing via our website, 5fm.co.za, via the 5FM app on your phone, or you can watch it live on youtube.com/5FM TV. We'll also make a podcast available via 5fm.co.za.
Youngblood 5 Talks on 5FM.
Hi, I'm Thebe Ikalafeng.
5 Talks. Share stories, change attitudes, celebrate people. Youngblood 5 Talks on 5FM. Talk loud, listen loud, live loud. 5 Talks on 5FM.
This is incredibly exciting. Good afternoon. Welcome to the first 5 Talks. We're live from a studio inside the SABC in Johannesburg in Auckland Park. This is going to be happening, as Rob mentioned, on the third Friday of every month between 3 to 4 p.m. The idea is to have entertaining, informative, introspective discussions with some of South Africa's most outstanding individuals. Our first big guest, Thebe Ikalafeng, is here. He is, as far as branding goes, arguably one of South Africa's biggest authorities on the subject. I can sit here and read out his biography. It's incredibly long. It's incredibly impressive. But a lot of that is going to come up in the discussion this afternoon. Thebe, good afternoon. Welcome to the first 5 Talks.
Thank you so much for having me as your sacrificial lamb.
It is my pleasure. You have been named as one of the 100 most influential Africans by New African magazine. You've been to over 50 countries across Africa. You've worked on over 100 brands. But before we get started, I want to ask you this. I feel like, Thebe, you would be the world's greatest wingman.
Oh, no. I'm pretty much straight down the line. I say the right things. I don't wing anything.
No, I'm dead serious. I reckon that if I took you out with me somewhere, I would have no problems.
I think, I don't know, Nick. Well, listen, I can talk my way through life and I can position my way through life. But it's all based on authenticity. It has to be real. What I don't do, I don't BS, and I don't make up things as we go. So, because, you know, the business that I'm in is the business of real stuff. It's a business of, it's not fluffing around. It's not, no, but I get along. I'll be fine.
We've got you here for the next hour. There's a lot that I want to ask you. I want to ask you about personal branding, because we now live in a world where we're all brands. We all have Facebook, we all have Twitter, specifically young people, many of whom have had profiles since we were in high school, and then we start going into the working world and people start looking at what we posted 5, 10 years ago. I also want to ask a lot about Brand South Africa. It's something that you've worked on, something you've been involved with, and I think we're at a very interesting point in South Africa at the moment. How do we view Brand South Africa? So these things and more, what we're going to discuss over the next hour. I also want to find out more about you. I know that in your life you've had a lot of successes, but a lot of these successes have come from failures. There have been many times in which you haven't got, you'll talk about this more, but I mean, it's been a difficult road in many senses, and been one that you have come out on top of. So I think that story would be very interesting to hear about too.
Well, I don't want to over-glorify that. It wasn't necessarily a terribly difficult road. I mean, I failed at vets. Everybody fails at vets. It's just around the corner. So when you guys finish varsity, high school and you get to vets, you must prepare yourself to fail first year. But what it does, it just gives you an opportunity to reverse back and then move forward faster with better ideas. And of course, you'd have seen the syllabus the year before, so it should be easier. So, but you know, I think every South African kid who grew up like us in the 70s, 80s, it's a difficult road for everybody. So nobody's any more special and nobody's any more privileged. We all grew up with difficulties of living in a country that not everybody loved. You know, I know if I speak to these young guys and ladies here, they will say, "What country are you talking about? We've never heard of that country, because we only know Mandela plus." But many of us know Mandela before, and then after the South Africa we live in. But everybody grew up with this. But everybody's got challenges even today. You know, we all grew up with single parents, live with their grandparents. You go to a township school, you come to the suburbs, you go to a Wits university, it claps you a little bit, and then you decide, what do I do now? How do I go forward? And then, like me, you know, you repeat it, you do well, you leave the country, you go overseas, you come back a better person.
You tuned in to the first ever 5 Talks on 5FM live from Johannesburg inside a live studio audience. Thebe Ikalafeng is our first guest. If you want to interact on social media, the hashtag is 5Talks5, the letter, one word. When we come back, we're going to take a quick break. Thebe, I want to talk about the individual as a brand.
No problem.
5FM in association with Mini present Submerged on Tour with Goldfish. Saturday, May the 2nd at the Zoo Lake.
We're hanging out with Thebe Ikalafeng. This is the first ever live talks, or 5 talks rather, broadcast live though, from Auckland Park Studios in Johannesburg. We've got Alberton High with us this afternoon. They're going to be involved in the Q&A session happening a little bit later. And remember, if you are engaging with us on social media, the hashtag as mentioned is 5Talks, and there'll be opportunities for you to send in questions to Thebe, which he will then answer a little bit later. But we were talking about this earlier, Thebe. We're all brands, aren't we?
Indeed we are. Because, when we get born, we get given names. And when they give you that name, they intend that you're going to be that. Look at my name, for example, is Thebe Ikalafeng, the full name, which is the shield has arrived. So there's a whole story around it. Because what a brand is a story. That's all it is. So when you get born, your parents says, we're gonna name you Nick Hammond, and there's a reason they name you that. You remind them of something that you're hopefully going to live up to. But a brand is a promise made and a promise delivered. You get born, you go out into the world, and you promise people you're gonna do things, and you do that, and you deliver on it, and that's your brand. If you don't deliver on it, that's still your brand. We are all brands because we all have names, and we all have things that we do.
So as a young person in South Africa trying to craft themselves into the new space in which we live, knowing that we are brands, what do we do? How do you view yourself as a brand, and how do you take what you want to sell to the world in the right way?
Well, the first most important thing you must understand is that you have to be authentic, you have to be real. You cannot make up stuff about yourself. Because if you make up stuff about yourself, you're going to trip sooner or later. And people are going to, quote unquote, catch you up. Catch on you and says, but that's not true, that's not who you are. The thing to remember is that when you're trying to build yourself into a brand, you have to be the same person at home, at school, and when you're with your friends. Because you cannot be 3 different people. Imagine having 3 different jobs. That's pretty much what it is. A brand is a job, and it's more fun if that job is something you enjoy and it's who you are, and you're proud to show off, and you're proud to tell anybody about it. So the thing that's important is you have to be real, you have to be consistent, you have to be authentic, and you have to tell your story at all points in time. And that story must be believable.
When I was in high school, Facebook started becoming a thing around grade 9. So we all had profiles. And back then, the brand was to be cool. So you would put all kinds of things on there that probably later down the line, when it came to job interviews, would not maybe be the best things to have available in the digital space. But we live in a world where that is a reality. So for a young person that is concerned with branding themselves, insofar as social media is concerned, what are the ways to go about it? What are some of the things that you need to be aware of and concerned about?
If you put it out there, it's going to come back at you sometime in the future. So what you want to make sure is that whatever you put out, you can live with when you are 21, when you're 25, when you're 30, when you're 50. Trevor Noah, for example, just got made a new host of The Daily Show, replacing Jon Stewart. I'm sure you guys know that. And guess what they did? They went to his old tweets, which he posted in 2009 and in America, and they broadcast them all over. They said, how could this guy be the new representative of the biggest show in America? He said horrible things about Jewish people, horrible things about women, horrible things about blacks. This guy is not the right person to represent. And Trevor says, that's 5 years ago. They're like, yes, Trevor, but it was you. Because remember, you are the same person. You may just not have the same experience, but but what you do every year is you have to be building onto the person that you want to be when you grow up. Social media is very dangerous. I think one needs to count up to 10 before you post everything. Because when you're angry and you're upset, you put up stuff, and what a lot of celebrities try and do, for example, and then they go and delete it. But they forget there's that thing called screen grab, munching, I don't know what they call it. And it's all out there already, and it's sent out into the world already. So it's better to not put it out there if you're not willing, if you're not able to deal with the consequences later.
Well, you've worked on a lot of brands where you've had to do damage control in the past. I think the University of the Free State is probably a good example of that. After they had the rate scandal, I know that you were involved, along with Professor Janssen, in reshaping the university's identity. So let's talk about the Trevor Noah incident. If you were representing brand Noah, how would you have then handled that?
I think Trevor in many ways handled it well. because, you know, he contextualized everything else within the comedy. That's what he does. It's not who he is. It's not saying, he wasn't being negative about the people. But what, you know, the funny thing about Trevor, because you know what he said? He said, he immediately after that, the stuff broke up, he sent out a tweet, and the tweet said, 140 characters, there's too many characters in 140 characters. And people started tweeting that around, and he deleted it immediately. But I think the right thing about him is he did not confront confront the people who said that. He just dealt with it. He says, it's something that I said in the past, but it was said in a different context. It was not said in this light. That's very, very important, that you are real, you are honest, you deal with it. Don't try and fight it. Because you know what happens in this business. And let's take a local example. For example, one cellular phone company brand, which the person had a terrible experience with the brand, and the guy took out a billboard and put it out on the highway. Everybody knows that, right? Put it up on the highway, and we all saw it on Twitter. We sent it around. And what did the company do? They went to court with him to go fight with him. And every time they fight, the fight gets bigger. So it's better to acknowledge the mistake sometimes and to move on and to apologize where you need to apologize. If you look at Free State and many, one of those scandals is what happens is the university dealt with the issues, and they came up with a corrective plan, and they move forward. But the best remedy is always to count up to 10 before you press send.
You're listening to 5Talks live on 5FM. This is the inaugural first time we've ever done it, broadcasting from a live studio audience in Johannesburg. We've got Thebe Ikalafeng here. We'll be live from 3 to 4. We're talking about branding individuals as brands, branding authorities. A little bit later, we're also going to discuss South Africa's role as a brand, because Mr. Ikalafeng has worked on Brand South Africa as well as Brand Ghana. But while we are on the topic of individual brands, what are then the hallmarks of a good, strong brand?
The first thing about a great brand is you must be focused. You must be known for something. So all great brands are known for one thing. You know, if you take a brand like Volvo, it's a terrible looking car, isn't it, guys? I mean, it's not a BMW, it's not a Porsche, it's not a Ferrari. Nobody wants to take it from you when you've got it. But they are only known for one thing, isn't it? They are known for safety. So great brands are known for one thing. I mean, you don't go to McDonald's and ask them for chicken licken, do you? You go there and you say, can I have a McBurger? So all the great brands, think about all the brands that you love. They do one thing and they do it very, very well. So first thing a great brand do, they do it very well. The second thing that a great brand do is they do it consistently. So you have to be that person, like I said, at home, at work, at play. So you have to be very, very, very consistent as a brand. But the most important thing is you have to be unique as well. You have to have a point of difference from other people. So you cannot be like, you know, open a corner shop and we see somebody's corner shop is doing well, now you want to do the same thing. So similarly as a human being, because remember, God does not create duplicates. So you are the only person who looks like you, who acts like you, who's got what you've got. So the best thing that you can do is to try and understand who you are and be that person all the time. You know, they say that you cannot create a brand, but what you can do is you can unearth your brand and you can live up to your brand. So the first thing that you generally must do is try and understand how people around you perceive you, what they think about you. Because the one thing you must understand is whatever your friends think about you, that's exactly who you are. Because that's what you are giving off, and that's what they are reading. So your job is not to argue with them. Your job is to say, I need to look at myself in the mirror and say, how do I send the right messages about me? And those messages should be correct. Authenticity must be unique. You must be focused. You must do one thing, you must do it well. You must be consistent everywhere. And everything about you must connect to that. So if you're building yourself as a brand, what you do, the type of sports you do. So what I like to do is look at your brand associations, you know, because they say birds of a feather flock together. So similarly, if you're building yourself as a brand or you're building any other brand, you should say, if I'm this type of person or type of brand, what type of brands do I surround myself with? So in other words, if I'm this type of person, I want to be the smart one at school. I want to be the head boy or head girl at school. So who do you surround yourself with? The smart ones. You surround yourself. And how do you project yourself? You have to project yourself in a certain way. That's how you build your brand.
Birds of a feather flock together. I like that.
To me, that's the most important thing you have to understand. That you are what we say about you when you leave the room. And the most important thing is birds of a feather flock together. Surround yourself with those type of people, those type of brands, which take out the best in you and which also show the best of you.
We're hanging out with Thebe Ikalafeng on 5Talks. Remember, if you want to engage with us online, the hashtag is 5Talks, 5 the letter, then one word. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about Brand South Africa, something that Thebe has been instrumental in and very involved with, as well as Brand Ghana, which I think might be interesting too to look at, because we are at a space where our sense of being African is becoming increasingly important, not only as young people, but as a country. We're at a bit of a difficult point, and I think that it will be insightful and also necessary to engage some of those points.
Excellent.
Young Blood 5. Talk loud. Listen loud. Live loud.
This is Veranda Panda to the Power of 5. It's called Pineapple Sunday. We're hanging out in the first ever 5Talks. 3 to 4 p.m. live from the SAB studios in Johannesburg. We've got a school here, Alberton High. I'll be asking some questions later. Remember, if you have questions for Thebe too, the hashtag is 5Talks. We'll be taking those on social media a little bit later. But first, with the second part of the discussion, Thebe, I wanted to talk about Brand South Africa because it's something that you were involved with. So let's begin with the conceptualization of it. How do you go about branding South Africa?
Well, branding a country is the same as branding a human being. The only difference with a country is that you've got too many bosses. And in South Africa, you've got 50 million bosses because the country belongs to the people. And the people who deliver the brand are the people. That's why when you're looking at Brand South Africa, for example, people, who we are as individuals, how we behave, our Ubuntu, our diversity is a key part of branding the South African nation. But like any other branding initiative, when you start branding, you must first go to the people and try and understand. Because you want to go understand from the people who visit South Africa, what do they think about South Africa? You go to the people who invest in South Africa, what do they think about South Africa? You ask the people who live in South Africa. Those are your three most important people. The people who invest here, the people who visit here, and the people who live here. Ask them what do they think about South Africa, what do they think South Africa stands for, and how do they want to represent, how do they want South Africa to be represented in the world? That helps you to then define. Remember I spoke earlier about how focus is so important. You then have to drill all that information down and say, what is the central thing about this country? What is this? What does this country represent? And that's quite important from a country perspective as well. And then once you've got that, then you can go out and deliver on that. Because a country brand does only three things. It helps to attract investment, it helps to attract visitors. You look at South Africa, I mean, we get about 10 million or so visitors every year. You look at from investment perspective, we are the #1 investment country in Africa. And you look at bigger countries like Nigeria don't have that opportunity. So that's what it is. And then the people, of course, have to love being part of South Africa. That's why when you see what's been happening in the last couple of days and all those people South Africans are feeling offended. They are saying, my brand is at stake. They're saying whatever's happening out in the streets, they are messing up my brand because that's my country. Because the thing about the difference between a product and a country is that we own South Africa.
And I want to come back to that in a second, the recent spate of xenophobic attacks that we've been seeing around the country. But first, so you've spoken about what it means to represent a country. It's like any other brand. What specifically are the things that you sell when you sell South Africa?
Well, when you sell South Africa, for example, you sell a couple of things. The first thing that you sell investment and immigration. So if you look at how you measure a country, where you say you're selling investment, come and invest here. Come and live in South Africa. Then what you're also selling, you are selling skills. You are saying that the people in South Africa, these are the type of people that we have. This is what they stand for. This is what they believe in, and this is who we are as a country. And we're a country of diverse people, a country of people with Ubuntu, a country of people who are creative. That's how we describe ourselves as South Africans. A country of people who think out of the box. You look at the history of South Africa. We're a country that's renewable, a country that can renew itself. What you're also selling, you're selling tourism. Come and visit South Africa, because you're saying we are that country that you can come and visit. But what you also sell, you are selling our culture and our heritage. You say, come to South Africa because this is the type of country that we are. This is our heritage. This is our history. This is how we got to here. And that's, if you look at all those attributes, are what makes South Africa such an attractive country. I mean, right now we're the #2 country in Africa in terms of just the wealth of the country, or the GDP. Nigeria, of course, 200 million people. people. It's very difficult to compete. And we only have a little 50 million people. But they are at 500 billion. It's a lot of money. I don't have enough toes. And then South Africa is at 350 billion in terms of what the country's GDP is. That's what we sell, and that's how we measure ourselves when we sell this country.
Let's unpack some of the problems that Brand South Africa has at the moment. I think given the recent spate of xenophobic attacks, as mentioned, also we're at a point where people are having to revisit a lot of our colonial history. And this must have an impact. What do we do about that? And from your I'd love to hear from your perspective, where are we as far as sentiment goes with Brand South Africa at the moment?
You know, the central proposition of South Africa, the overall message that we sell about South Africa is that we're a country that inspires new ways. We're a country that really knows how to go out of its way to solve problems. So when you're looking at the challenges that we have in now, whether it's statues and all those, or whether the removal of colonial statues, or whether it's a xenophobic attacks, you are looking at the country, looking at itself and questioning itself. You look at a country reflecting at itself. Let's look at perhaps the statues for a minute. Now, if you look at the road statues or the Van Riebeeck statues and all those, the important thing to remember is that they are a part of our history because we are where we are today. We had to travel that journey to get to where we are. So, in many ways, what we do want to know, we want to have somehow we somehow want to be able to know that we never forget where we come from, because you know the problem with history is that if you forget it, you will repeat it again. So somehow we need to know that there was a Jan van Riebeeck. You know, it's always inspiring for me when I go to Cape Town, or rather, I should say inspiring in terms of it always opens my mind when I go to Cape Town. The first time I went to Cape Town, and I look at next to my place where I live in Cape Town, I look at there is the fort. And when I was a young student in high school, when I was high school, junior primary, we needed to learn how to draw those 5 corners of that fort. And I did not know that Jan van Riebeeck and all those, and it just, that's what we needed to do. But now when I looked at it next time, I says, this is where that sucker used to live. He used to keep us all locked up and created all those colors. You know, but now I cannot forget the history of South Africa, how we got to. So somehow we need to find a place to hold that history so that we don't forget it. But what we also need to do, we need to remember that we need to also celebrate our new history as well. So we need to find a way for the two histories to live, one not to forget, the other in terms to, and the one to celebrate where we come from. The challenge with South Africa now is when you go to the schools and all those, we don't have in our textbooks the history of the new South Africa. And that is the reasons then now you're beginning to see all the problems that we have in the country, that we don't have that. Now, when looking at the xenophobic attacks, that's a big problem for us. It's a big problem for us because South Africa has always been called South Africa and not Africa. South Africans, when they go beyond the Limpopo, they say they're going to Africa. So you always ask them the question, so where are you right now? You know, you are in Africa. So what the problem is with that problem is that it really questions our identity with the country, with the continent. Because now we ask ourselves, if we are doing this to our fellow brothers, what are they going to do when we go to their countries? When you look at West African companies are making money, they're making money in the other African countries. Most of MTN's money comes from Nigeria. So you ask yourself the question, if we treat Nigerians like this, we treat Ghanaians, we treat Malawans like this, are we ever going to be able to do business in those countries ever again? The important thing to remember is that we are all Africans, we're all fellow brothers. But the most important thing to remember is that before South Africa got the freedom that we got in '94, many of these countries harbored us, many of these countries were our host, many of these countries offered us their homes, their food, their weapons to help us to deliver the country that we have today. We should never forget that.
Let's talk about that sense of being an African, because I would imagine that with Brand South Africa, there's something innate in that helps you a little bit, because you don't have to worry so much about what it means to be a South African. You are one. But very quickly, when you approach Brand Ghana, how do you go about doing that?
The principles are also still the same, because the principles are also trying to understand this country. You know, you look at a country like Ghana is very strong from a heritage perspective. Even the Ashanti, who are just one part of Ghana, but they are such a dominant part. They're such a very strong country, a country with a very strong belief, a very religious country. So you look at every country's got its own attributes. What you need to do is when you're doing understanding from the people, the visitors, the investors, you try and understand what distinguishes Ghana from South Africa, from Kenya, from Nigeria. So that's the first thing we're trying to do, understand those insights, what distinguishes a country. So it doesn't really matter what country it is, whether it's the United States of America, whether it's the United States of Africa, or whether it's South Africa. What you need to understand is what distinguishes that country, what drives it, what inspires it, what can the people who live in that country say, I'm proud to be a part of this country, and what they say about it represents me.
We're live on 5 Talks with Thebe Ikalafeng, broadcasting from a live studio audience in Johannesburg. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, it's Q&A session time. I have hundreds of questions that I would still love to ask you, but it's not about me anymore. It's about the audience. And also, if you want to engage with Twitter, hashtag 5Talks.
5Talks on 5FM.
It's 3:45. We're live with 5 Talks on 5FM. I'm here with Thebe Ikalafeng. It's been an incredibly inspirational and informative past 45 minutes. But the time now is to ask some questions. So we've been taking a few that have been coming in from Twitter. We also have Alberton High here. There are a number of young learners that are very keen to ask a few things. So I'll go around in a second. But first, this is coming from Cameron. He says, how can the nation, as individuals, all learn to be innovators?
Well, South Africa is an innovative country. I mean, that's why, you know, our taglines are out inspiring new ways. Because this is a country where, if you look at the dollars, you know, when the water is rushing, those teal looking like metals, they come from this country. When you look at pay as you go, or the one that we use for MTN and for Vodacom and all those, that was created here. In this country. I think what helps South Africa to be creative and to be innovative is because we're a country of people who are willing to try new things, willing to try new ways. And the best way to make people creative, if you will, if you want to answer in that way, is to allow them to be themselves, is to give them a space to be themselves and just really give them the resources. So we want a type of education system which is open, which allows you to find yourself, to find your natural space, because that allows you, but also challenges you, because then that gives you an opportunity to create new ways.
Leo Mbana wants to know, is the South African government, in your opinion, doing enough to protect foreigners?
Well, yesterday the president spoke in Parliament, and I was quite impressed with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Malusi Gigaba, when he was on CNN talking about the things that they are doing. One always wishes that the response would have been sooner, and the response would have been more decisive. I mean, if I was running the country, I'm sure I would have sent the army out into the streets and to just go clobber and arrest everybody who was beating up on our fellow brothers and sisters. But, you know, there's a country, there's a constitution, and there's a way of doing things, and there's an order in terms of how these things are managed. Police first, and only if it's out of control, you send in the army. But having said so, what I think the government is doing as best as it can within its limits. They could have been a bit more tougher, I think. But I think the last 2 days we've seen them getting a handle of the situation. We should have anticipated it, though. If you look at from 2008, it was a bit of a problem there. We should have known that there's going to be a problem. Until people have jobs, and until the disparity between the rich and the poor, or the have and the have-nots, is made narrower, it's always going to be a challenge to manage this country.
I'm incredibly excited about the fact that we do have Alberton High here, and I actually want to take some questions from the floor. So if you are keen to ask something, if you could please just raise your hand, say your name, we're live on the radio, and then pose the question to Thebe.
Hi, my name's Adele. I just wanted to know, in the beginning you mentioned that everybody has their own brand. So did you always know your brand, or did you discover it as you went through university and stuff?
Well, two things. I always knew my name, so that's a good thing. And I always try to understand what does my name mean and all those. But I think, you know, I grew up in a very interesting family, a very accommodating family. I think my family was great in one thing. They allowed me to be myself, and as a result, I pursued my passion, because they say if you pursue your passions will lead you to your purpose. And your purpose is your brand, your reputation. So the most important thing is to find out what it is that you're passionate about, and to be free to do that and to discover it, because that will lead you to your true life's work.
Hi, my name is Shanae. You mentioned earlier that we have somewhat 10 million visitors coming to our country each year. And at this stage, they are terrified of coming. I know this from personal experience. I got a Facebook message from my aunt asking, is it safe for us to still come visit? How will we now brand our country in order to keep these tourists to come visit our country and to keep their investors here, because let's be honest, our economy needs them in order to grow. So what's the next step? What do we do now to earn back their trust?
I didn't ask those type of questions when I was in high school. I think the syllabus has clearly changed since my days. Well, the first thing that we need to do is we need to solve the problem. We need to solve the problem in terms of we need to arrest the people, and I think the government has been arresting them at a furious pace. We need to arrest them, we need to try them, we need to jail them. That's one, because what's happening is just blatant criminality, and we need to arrest them and jail them. That's one. And then assure tourists that this is a country that is safe to visit. Remember now what happened in Tunisia, what happened in Egypt, what happened in all those countries. The tourists will beginning to come back again because they saw, because when what tourists are going to, they're going to listen and they're going to come and experience and they're going to tell other people about the country. I think once we've arrested these guys, we've tried them, our guys and girls, whoever it is. Second, we need to go out and assure visitors and investors that this is still the #1 country to invest in Africa. This is still one of the top 20 countries to invest in the world. I think the 15th in the world, best countries to invest in the world. And once we tell those positive stories about South Africa, but remember who Brand South Africa is. We are Brand South Africa. So when we get onto a Facebook and our auntie calls us and asks us, is it safe to visit? We should say, auntie, you are staying with me. This is a safe country.
Hi, sir. My name is Priyanka. Earlier you said that when we are born a brand. So how do you expect us to keep that brand if society and social media consistently tries to mold us into a specific brand?
Such a good question, because, such a good question. I think it's Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde said something that most people are other people. Their lives, their passions are other people and rather themselves. I think the most important thing that you want to do is you want to be yourself in the midst of a world that is trying to make you other people. So what you need to do is you need to surround yourself with true friends and true anchors. Surround yourself with the people who really care about you and the people that you can trust, because those people will allow you to be yourself. Because as soon as you start running your life according to your friends, according to social media and according to Facebook and all those, then you are not leading your life. You are leading other people's lives. You don't want to be anybody else but Priyanka. Because there's nobody cooler, right?
Hi, Thebe. My name is Oscar. I can brand myself as an individual, as a teacher, trying to transform these young minds one math sum at a time. But as we all come together every day at school, we're coming with our individual brands to a school. And we brand our school as the School of Excellence. What can we do as a school, and what advice could you give us so that we can go forward as the School of Excellence, but to be a part of South Africa's new history, to write that new history then as a brand?
The first thing that I hope Alberton High is about, I'm hoping Alberton High is a South African school. So if Alberton High is a South African school, one would then expect that the first things that they buy into South Africa, the brand. They fly the South African flag, they sing the South African anthem, they buy into the vision of the country that we want to be, a country that's a country of fewer poor people, a country that's people are a bit more equal, and a country where people have got jobs. So really a better country than the country we had 20 years ago. So that's the first thing that we need to subscribe to as a country. Now, having subscribing to that, I think as a high school, what you then need to do is you need to create a playground for these minds, so that these minds can be celebrated and these minds can find themselves and these minds can be nurtured. So the beautiful thing about what teachers do is teachers need to mold you. They don't need to shape it. They need to mold you and guide you and keep you in line. And that's the most important thing to me, I think, that you can do. Beyond that, don't try and make them anybody else but who they are. Try and unearth out of every single one of them the very best of who they are. That's what I love about your school, 40 years of excellence. What you need to do is you need to find excellence in every single individual. Don't make them the same person, make them individual excellent people.
I know there are plenty more hands still going up in this room, and there are plenty more tweets still coming through on Twitter. Unfortunately, given time constraints, we have to wrap the Q&A session there. It would be great to have you here for hours to pick your brain, to understand what you know better. And so far, it's been such an insightful experience, but unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it there. So thank you to everybody who did ask questions, and I think that we really have got to the core of some of the bigger issues that we wanted to discuss today.
Thank you so much, Nick. I mean, this is really a great platform because I think radio has got such an important opportunity because it's the one thing, the one medium that reaches the majority of the country. So you've got such an important role to be able to connect to these young minds, because what these guys and girls do every day is they've got their phones in their heads, and what they're listening to stories about the world and stories to South Africa. So I think the good news is let 5FM be the channel that tells the story of South Africa. We live in a great country, and our job is to find that greatness in the country, is to use that greatness and to get the greatness out of us and to be the very best we can be.
We're live on 5Talks. And there goes the audience. Thank you very much for being a part of this. You listening in your cars, at home, wherever you are, this has been a part of history. We will be doing this on the third Friday of every month, inviting people like Thebe Ikalafeng to come and speak to us, people that are leaders in their field. He's a branding authority. We want to speak to leaders in academics, leaders in science, people that can inspire this nation introspectively. And as Thebe said, it's not often that you find platforms like this, like what 5 is doing. This is free. You can tune in, you can engage, you can listen, you can connect, and you can communicate. So Thebe, thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate it. It was fantastic to meet you. And I still do want you to be my wingman.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a great one.
Talks on 5FM. Most radio.
5FM.